Good afternoon, you guys. It's your boy Ben Mahari here, representing Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. Much love to the entire LDBC. This is going to be a different type of video because it's not going to be relating to basketball here, more about baseball in this particular instance. That you can see the MLB logo on the top right hand corner of your screen there. And what we're going to particularly talk about in this particular video is the one major topic of discussion that has been talked about so many times, not just on sports talk radio, but on talk shows everywhere. And this is about why Barry Bonds belongs in the Hall of Fame. All right. Now, the obvious thing about Barry Bonds is obviously the records. He's the all time leader in career home runs, um, great career based on percentage for the single season, slugging percentage, um, most career walks with over 2,558 walks, and also in 2001 had the most home runs in a single season, basically shattering the record set by Roger Maris way before. Mark McGwire held it for at least about at least 3 years before Barry Bonds broke the record. McGwire had 70 home runs in 1998 in that famous home run chase with Sammy Sosa. But by 3 years, Barry Bonds basically shattered that record with 73. And the one thing that Barry Bonds achieved during his career, there too, that people don't know about too, is also that he also is the second player to have two seasons in slugging percentages over 800, with his 863 slugging percentage in 2001 and 812 slugging percentage in 2004. The only player that was able to do that was Babe Ruth back in 1920, when he basically had a slugging percentage of 847 and 846 in 1921. All right. And so I wanted to particularly talk about why the man obviously belongs in the Hall of Fame. I mean, the accomplishments, speak for itself. 14-time All-Star, 7 NL MVPs, and actually should have been at least 10 NL MVPs, because I could make the argument that the 96 one, which, Barry Bonds hit 42 home runs, had 129 RBIs, and batted 308. He should have won the MVP, but instead they gave it to Ken Caminiti, who batted 40 home runs, 130 RBIs, and had a slugging percentage of 326, and never achieved those same numbers ever again throughout his entire career, because he never hit more than 25 home runs throughout his entire career. And so I particularly believe that he should have won the 96 one there too. There were other instances where the other guys had won the MVP that you just basically shook your head. But he was a 7-time MVP, and he also won 8 Gold Gloves, for his fielding. He didn't have a particularly strong arm, but it was a good, accurate arm. 12 Silver Slugger awards. He was a 2-time NL batting champion and twice led the majors in home runs. And so his accomplishments speak more than itself. But also, I'm going to tell you about why he was always an all-time leader in walks. Particularly, the reason why he was an all-time leader in walks is because, one, he was good at tracking where the ball was in the strike zone. I was told, years ago when I was a kid watching him play, was Barry Bonds had a perfect in-depth perception in his eyesight. So therefore, he could read the pitches, and he can really read where the ball is located in the strike zone. And the other times, most of the walks were basically intentional walks. I've seen games where the opposing team would just intentionally walk him with the bases loaded, because they did not want no parts of him, because they didn't want to see him hit a grand slam in front of their face. And so this man literally changed the game from this perspective. He was the only guy in the history of baseball that had the advantage over the pitcher. The good old saying is that typically the advantage always goes to the pitcher in every game. As I hold on one second. There we go. So the one thing that Barry Bonds changed is he had the advantage over the pitcher, because he could read your pitches. He knew how to make you throw the pitches to where he wants you to get. And the scary part was he only had 2 good pitches a hit per at bat, and one of those times he could either walk or hit the ball out of the ballpark. I mean, the guy was just unbelievable to watch. You know what I mean? Now, unfortunately, it did not duplicate into postseason success. The only time he had a really outstanding postseason was back in 2002 when basically he carried that New York Giants team to the World Series and nearly on the verge of a world championship. If Dusty Baker didn't take out Russ Ortiz in Game 6, I bet you that they would have won the series and taken home his only chance at a championship. But during his time in Pittsburgh, his teams fell short 3 times of making it to the World Series, including the infamous Game 7 in the 1992 NLCS against the Atlanta Braves, where they held a 2-0 lead to the bottom of the ninth until they basically gave that game away. And so, in that aspect, he didn't had his greatest, strongest postseason runs, but he always was the best fine-tuned player in terms of hitting and also stealing bases. I mean, back in his days in Pittsburgh, he was the perfect 5-tool player. Okay, and the other thing that he also achieved, though, as well, which is something that nobody even knows about. Okay, with his father, Bobby Bonds, all right, in combined total home runs, both of them lead in father-son combinations in home runs with 1,094 home runs and 975 stolen bases. Okay, Bobby Bonds, which is his father, had 332 home runs and 461 stolen bases. Okay, and so these guys, he basically learned how to play the entire position of the outfield and learn how to hit effectively and know how to steal bases. So this guy from day one was the perfect 5-tool player. Now, I'm gonna explain to you why the guy is not being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and it's because of one particular reason. The guy was not well liked by the media. I've seen interviews and seen press conferences where Barry Bonds would not even talk to the reporters. And anytime he would talk to you, he would go out of his way to insult you, insult your character, insult your manhood. I mean, it was basically brutal for the reporters. And a lot of those reporters held a lot of resentment against Barry Bonds by the way he treated them, which explains why he's not been inducted into the Hall of Fame. And it's worth noting that there's been a belief where he allegedly took steroids during the early 2000s when his home run numbers and his slugging percentages spiked through the roof. And in the Game of Shadows book, written by the two Sports Illustrated reporters, it was basically allegedly reported that Barry Bonds, the reason why he basically allegedly took steroids was because he was getting envious of the fact that Barry Bonds was not getting the attention and the recognition he deserved for being the great player that he was, and that all the attention was being brought on by Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire, who were not even close to the 5-tool type players that basically Barry Bonds was. And so those two were being credited for saving baseball, when allegedly baseball was basically need to be saved by the guys that were basically not treating the sport. And so when Barry Bonds saw what these guys were doing and they were getting all the attention and all the limelight, Barry Bonds basically said, hey, if they were doing it and they're basically getting away with it, then why not me? And that's why he allegedly took, performance enhancing drugs to try to catch up with a lot of those guys. And the way he was able to do it was beyond a joke. You can say whatever you want. You can say that, oh, he cheated, he doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Well, last time I checked, there have been a number of players that have allegedly used steroids in the past that are now in the Hall of Fame currently. Guys like Jeff Bagwell, Mike Piazza, and even Ivan Rodriguez, who was in the famous Jose Canseco book that basically Canseco admitted while he was in Texas, he injected Ivan Rodriguez with steroids. And the same thing you can say in Oakland. When OK Canseco and Mark McGwire were teammates, Jose Canseco would inject steroids to Mark McGwire. And so, miss me with the whole notion that you don't go in because he cheated. Because those guys right now, they're in the Hall of Fame and they have all their dirt behind it too. And so, this is a bit of a punishment process that they're going through right now because, I talked to Lavelle E. Neal III. When I was in college, I talked with Lavelle E. Neal III, who works as a reporter for the Star Tribune, who covers the Minnesota Twins for many, many years. And he's part of the Baseball Writers Association of America. I actually specifically talked about him I talked about the Barry Bonds issue even back then. And he even agreed that what has been going on right now is allegedly ridiculous. But there's a bit of a punishment process going through a lot of these reporters because some of them who worked in the Bay Area and covered Barry Bonds have a lot of resentment against Bonds because of the way that he treated them. And it's just not right. If the man, listen, it should not matter if the athlete treats reporters badly or not. If the man's records speak Hall of Fame, there is no specific reason why he should not be in the Hall of Fame. And I think right now he's at near 9 of eligibility, so he's got at least one more year of eligibility left. But I'm wondering what they're going to do with David Ortiz because to me, David Ortiz is going to be the most hardest case to figure out because he was not on the Mitchell report, but there's been a lot of rumors and a lot of things about David Ortiz that lead you to believe that he may have used performance-enhancing drugs as well during his baseball career. So it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do with David Ortiz. But listen, if you're going to put Jeff Bagwell, Mike Piazza, and basically Ivan Rodriguez in the Hall of Fame, why not Barry Bonds? I mean, Barry Bonds has smashed every record known to man. You cannot have a baseball Hall of Fame without Barry Bonds. And I'm tired of basically some of the writers are saying like, well, we're not putting him in because we want to protect the integrity of the sport. There have been a lot of dirty guys in that Hall of Fame, a lot of dirty players, I should say, that are in the Hall of Fame right now. And Ty Cobb is a racist SOB, but somehow you put him into the Hall of Fame because of what he did in the sport, right? So miss me with the whole double standard. If Barry Bonds does not get into the Hall of Fame, along with Roger Clemens too, then you should just destroy the entire Hall of Fame altogether because what they've been doing to Bonds is absolutely ridiculous. The guys that belong in the Hall of Fame, Bonds, Roger Clemens, and Pete Rose. Pete Rose right now deserves, in my opinion, to be reinstated from baseball because listen, the man served his time. It is time to let the man be reinstated to baseball and earn his rightful place in the Hall of Fame. But I'm sticking with Bonds here. Bonds has had a bad boy image throughout his entire life, and mostly because of the fact that these petty reporters, resent him and how he treated them. All right, and he wasn't the most liked guy. I'm sure, and I'm sure he treated a lot of his teammates poorly. But when it comes down to it, and when it comes to the numbers of what he did during his baseball career, it speaks for itself. So if they don't put this man into the Hall of Fame again for this last year of eligibility, I promise you, there are going to be a lot of fans and a lot of baseball players even today that are going to look at the Hall of Fame in a very different light. All right. How do you have a baseball Hall of Fame without Barry Bonds? And you put Mike Messina in the Hall of Fame who never even won a Cy Young Award. See, how is it a guy that never won a Cy Young Award gets into the Hall of Fame? I mean, Mike Messina, really? I just don't understand it. I just don't get it. I never understood it. And so the writers have a lot of explaining to do if they don't put him into the Hall of Fame. Because remember, Edgar Martinez, who was one of the greatest designated hitters of all time, had to wait literally 9 years before he got into the Hall of Fame. And right now, Barry Bonds is now going to be waiting until up to his 10th year to see if he gets into the Hall of Fame. He needs at least 70% of the votes to get in. And his percentage can increase over time, but his years are running out of eligibility going into the Hall of Fame. If the man doesn't get in by year 10, you should just rid of the Baseball Hall of Fame entirely because it's absolutely ridiculous why Bonds is not into the Hall of Fame. But tell me what you guys think in the comments section.